The following is a dangerous video. In it, I'll be providing you with information on card combinations that you must never run in your Magic the Gathering decks. Why? Because these specific cards, when they interact with one another in the ways that I shall outline, end the game. No, they don't win you the game. They end it so that it may not continue. The game ceases with no winners, and all players end up with a tie. I am trusting that everyone here is an adult who can handle the responsibility of this knowledge, to use this knowledge so that you never use these cards in the combinations that I'm about to outline. For if you do, the game simply is no more. It will be the real-life equivalent of crashing the Magic Online client. Hopefully, my trust in you is well placed, and you can exercise self-control and never ever run these card combos. But before we begin, a quick word about control. This video is sponsored by Keeps, a subscription men's health brand for hair loss prevention. Just as you can control what cards and combos you put in your deck, you too can control how you wish to present yourself to the world. Some of us choose to have long hair, and that is fine and sexy and nice. Some of us choose to have shorter hair, and that too is fine and sexy and nice. And some of us choose to have no hair at all, and that is fine and sexy and nice. But what happens if nature works in a way that it tries to take away your ability to choose how you wish to present yourself and how you wish to have your hair? Well, that is where Keeps comes in. Keeps is just the generic version of the only two FDA-approved hair loss products, meaning you get actual medication. You literally are working with a licensed doctor via online consultations, getting a prescription, and getting Keeps, the generic version of those medications. And that's it, plain and simple. Keeps is medication at a huge savings, and it's available for you should you want it. The medication is delivered right to your door, all of which makes for a safe, secure, and easy process. So if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/Tolarian or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. That's KEEPS.com/Tolarian. Remember, long hair or no, you are super sexy because you are undeniably yourself. Thank you, Keeps, for sponsoring this video. Let us begin with Pariah and Stuffy Doll. These two cards should never be combined together. Why? Well, if we start by casting Stuffy Doll and choose ourselves as the player, then cast Pariah on Stuffy Doll, and then use Stuffy Doll's ability to deal 1 damage to ourselves, since we have Pariah, that damage will get redirected to Stuffy Doll, which deals the damage to us, which then redirects to Stuffy Doll, and that will continue ad infinitum. If no player can stop this loop by removing one or more of the cards involved, or if they can but choose not to, the game ends in a draw. This is because we have gotten ourselves stuck in a chain of events that must occur. We are never given the option to have Stuffy Doll not deal damage to us, or have Pariah not deal that damage to Stuffy Doll instead. The game cannot continue. It simply ends. Do not use this combination of cards in this way, lest that happen. Nor should you use Platinum Angel plus Transcendence. This is a pretty straightforward combo. We cast Platinum Angel first so we don't lose the game and our opponents won't win. Then we cast Transcendence. Transcendence's lose the game ability is actually a triggered ability that will trigger as long as we have 20 life or more. Transcendence will trigger for us to lose the game and then fail because Platinum Angel prevents us from losing the game. And then trigger again and again because we still meet the conditions for Transcendence's trigger, which is being at 20 life or higher. Now, this combo is fairly easy to disrupt for our opponents because they could destroy Platinum Angel and then watch us lose the game from Transcendence. Fountain Watch, however, would help mitigate this by giving both our artifacts and enchantments Shroud, preventing our combo pieces from being destroyed from targeted removal spells such as Disenchant. If we want to double up on the protection, we can add Spiritual Asylum, which is an enchantment that gives our creatures and lands Shroud, thereby protecting our Fountain Watch, which is protecting our Platinum Angel and Transcendence. Again, I'm only instructing you on these cards so you know what not to run together. And you must never run Lich's Mirror with Donate or Harmless Offering in a deck that's seeking to deal infect damage to your opponent. Why? Well, let's say you cast Lich's Mirror, and then donated it or offered it to your opponent. Once Lich's Mirror is in our opponent's possession, were you to set up an infect kill, though I will also point out that a commander damage kill would work as well. But just for the sake of this video, let's say you put 10 poison counters on that opponent. Well, what happens? Your opponent is losing due to having 10 poison counters, and Lich's Mirror instead has them set their life total to 20 and shuffle almost everything into their library, but not Lich's Mirror. This is because you are the owner of Lich's Mirror and not the opponent who controls Lich's Mirror, and who is losing the game and shuffling away all the permanents they own. More importantly, they control but do not own Lich's Mirror. So Lich's Mirror does not shuffle itself away into its owner's deck like it normally would, such as when we lost a game with a Lich's Mirror that we own and control. Once Lich's Mirror's effect has been performed, your opponent immediately loses the game again due to their 10 poison counters. Lich's Mirror does not remove or reset poison counters the same way it does for a player's life total. Since your opponent immediately loses the game, due to state-based actions, Lich's Mirror applies again. Lich's Mirror, in this scenario, will endlessly prevent you from losing and attempt to reset the game for your opponent, only to fail and to prevent it again. So the tricky part of this combo would be to put 10 poison counters on a player, though this also works for commander damage. If you wanted to go the infect route, you'd have to be in blue or red at least to successfully cede control of Lich's Mirror, and most likely black or green to effectively pile on the infect damage quickly. Blue, of course, can do this with cards like Blighted Agent and proliferate effects such as Contagion Engine, or Flux Channeler, or Inexorable Tide. However, green and black are simply faster in most cases with Skittles and Triumph of the Hordes in green. But that's not the only combination of cards you should never ever run, as I now want to talk about Celestial Convergence plus Repay in Kind, or Arbiter of Nullridge. Celestial Convergence is an enchantment that enters with 7 omen counters on it and removes an omen counter on your upkeep. When there are no more omen counters to remove, Celestial Convergence checks to see who has the highest life total and declares that player the winner. Importantly, if there is a tie for the highest life total, the game is a draw. Enter Repay in Kind and Arbiter of Knowledge. Both cards even out the life totals amongst all players, with Repay in Kind setting each player's life total equal to the lowest life total among the players, and Arbiter of Knowledge to the highest. So in a 4-player game, let's say the players' life totals are 7, 23, 36, and 44. Repay in Kind would set everyone's life total to 7, and Arbiter of Knowledge will set everyone's life total to 44. Both achieve the same net result in equalizing everyone's life totals, so that when we remove the last counter off of Celestial Convergence, more than 2 life totals are tied, and therefore the game ends in a draw. This combo can be achieved in mono-white using Arbiter of Knowledge, but black is recommended since that color also adds creatures such as Hex Parasite that can remove omen counters off of Celestial Convergence to significantly speed up this process. Did I say recommended? I mean not recommended. I do not recommend you run these cards. I'm only telling you how to do this so you don't do it. And remember, if you remove all the counters in this way, you will still have to wait until your upkeep, because the winner draw ability, of course, is part of the upkeep trigger. Next is a terrible combo that hopefully your parents have warned you about. You never want to cast Opalescence and then cast Day of the Dragons. Why? Well, Day of the Dragons is a creature thanks to Opalescence, and therefore exiles itself when it enters the battlefield trigger. And therefore, exile itself when it enters the battlefield trigger of exiling all creatures and creating that many 5/5 flying dragon tokens resolves. It leaves the battlefield trigger, then triggers, sacrificing our dragon tokens and returning Day of the Dragons into play. Day of Dragons enter the battlefield trigger triggers, and it again exiles itself, and so on. The net result is that Day of the Dragons will endlessly enter the battlefield, exile itself, then return itself to the battlefield, and exile itself, and so on. And what's worse, this combo is one that can be cheated into play much earlier, with spells like Replenish, Resurgent Belief, and Open the Vaults. And the loop of triggers from Day of the Dragons will immediately go off and crash the game. And I also want to advise you against Starfield of Nyx, as that can act as a backup of Opalescence that admittedly would need a bit more work to get going. For Starfield of Nyx to turn our enchantments into creatures, we need 3 additional enchantments in play besides Day of the Dragons. Day of the Dragons needs to be a creature when its enter the battlefield trigger resolves for that combo to work. So by the time we cast or return Day of the Dragons to play from Starfield of Nyx, those extra enchantments are a must. Since Starfield of Nyx's second ability is static and a continuous effect, as soon as Day of the Dragons enters, it is already a creature if we have Starfield of Nyx and at least 3 other enchantments. Let's talk about some serious problems, some big no-nos, and that's Solemnity plus Marauding Raptor plus Safehold Elite. You don't want these to combo off together. The goal, as it were, of this combo is to have a creature die and then return to the battlefield, only to die and return again ad nauseum. To do this, we need 3 pieces: a small enough creature with Persist, a way to stop that creature from getting a counter due to Persist, and a way to instantly kill the creature when it enters the battlefield. There are multiple copies of each card in this combo to achieve the same net result, but to explain the main combo, let's look at how it works. First, we need to cast Solemnity, an enchantment that prevents counters from being put on players, artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands. What we care about most is the prevention of counters being put on creatures in this combo. Alternate options to Solemnity are Vizier of Remedies and Melira Sylvok Outcast, though these are easier to remove as creatures, and they only work with creatures with Persist. Solemnity has the added bonus of working when the creature in question has a low enough toughness and Undying, which is functionally the same as Persist, but with opposite counters. Next, we cast Marauding Raptor. All that matters on this card is essentially it will repeatedly kill a Persist creature with 2 or less toughness that enters the battlefield. An alternate option to the Raptor is the 2 RR enchantment Aether Flash. Both cards immediately deal damage to any creature that enters the battlefield. Finally, we cast Safehold Elite, which is simply a creature with Persist that will importantly die to Marauding Raptors or Aether Flash as soon as it enters the battlefield. Again, a creature with Undying with 2 or less toughness will work here too, with the possible exception of Geralf's Messenger, because that can potentially kill our opponents instead of causing the game to crash. If we don't have a creature with Undying, Mikaeus the Unhallowed can turn any non-human creature we cast that is small enough to fit this role. So Persist is a triggered ability that, when a creature with Persist dies, Persist returns that creature to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter if that creature didn't have any -1/-1 counters on it when it died. If a creature with Persist has a -1/-1 counter on it when it dies, Persist does not trigger and the creature goes to the graveyard as normal. Undying works exactly the same way as this, but instead of -1/-1 counters, we are dealing with +1/+1 counters. If a creature like Safehold Elite dies with a Solemnity on the battlefield, Persist will always trigger and return the creature to the battlefield because Solemnity makes it impossible for counters to be placed on creatures. The particular cards in this combo were chosen for their lower mana value and overall flexibility, but there are many more options beyond the cards already mentioned. For example, instead of Safehold Elite, also in green and white, we have Kitchen Finks and Heart Mender. In black or colorless, we have Putrid Goblin and Lesser Masticore. That's not including any Undying creatures and Mikaeus, which, as I mentioned earlier, work with Solemnity. Some decks could even have Vizier of Remedies or Melira in addition to Solemnity for extra redundancy. Or if those decks have access to Protean Hulk or Collected Company, to flash out combo pieces from the deck. Keep in mind that if we select Marauding Raptor and a non-Persist creature such as Melira and put them into play from Collected Company or Protean Hulk, we will nullify our combo as the Marauding Raptor will kill the other creature since they both enter the battlefield at the same time. This is because any creature with an enters the battlefield trigger is already on the battlefield by the time that trigger resolves. Marauding Raptor will see that Melira entered the battlefield and therefore trigger his damage ability, even though they both entered at the same time. A simple but more expensive combo is Marauding Raptor or Aether Flash with a Polyraptor. This combo also resolves around Marauding Raptor dealing damage to a creature entering the battlefield to create a game-crashing loop. Polyraptor has the keyword Enrage and makes a token copy of itself when it is enraged, meaning when it takes damage. The token copy of Polyraptor is an exact copy and therefore has Enrage as well. So when the copy enters the battlefield, Marauding Raptor will trigger, deal 2 damage to the token copy, and the copy will create another token copy of Polyraptor. Aether Flash does the job as well, but Marauding Raptor is, in most cases, the better choice because it costs a red and a colorless to cast, whereas Aether Flash costs 2 red and 2 generic to cast. Additionally, Marauding Raptor reduces the casting cost of Polyraptor by 1 colorless. Next, let's discuss why you should never run a Johnny's Chosen with Enchanted Evening. Were you to first cast Enchanted Evening, which will make all permanents enchantments in addition to their other types, then cast a Johnny's Chosen, well, a Johnny's Chosen would enter the battlefield as an enchantment. A Johnny's Chosen sees itself enter the battlefield as an enchantment, and therefore triggers its ability of giving us a 2/2 white cat creature token. For creatures enter the battlefield trigger to actually trigger, the creature must be in play before the enter the battlefield trigger goes on the stack. This is important because this is how a Johnny's Chosen triggers on itself, entering the battlefield when it's an enchantment due to the continuous effect from Enchanted Evening. Since the cat token is also an enchantment entering the battlefield, a Johnny's Chosen triggers once again to give us another 2/2 white cat enchantment creature token that, unless stopped with removal, will endlessly give us enchantment creature tokens and stall the game. Finally, I would like to point out that you should never combine Pitiless Plunderer with Titanias Song. Why? Well, Pitiless Plunderer gives us a treasure token every time one of our creatures dies. So with Titanias Song and/or March of the Machines as a backup, we turn our non-creature artifacts, such as treasure tokens, into artifact creatures with power and toughness equal to their mana value. State-based actions immediately destroy 0 mana value artifacts that turn into creatures from this ability. Since a creature died because it's a 0/0 artifact creature token, Pitiless Plunderer gives us a treasure token, which will immediately die, and so on ad infinitum. Titania's Song makes all the non-creature artifacts lose all abilities, whereas March of the Machines doesn't. It seems like we may be able to sacrifice our treasure tokens for mana, but that is not the case. Players can only activate mana abilities if you have priority, are casting a spell, or are paying a cost. State-based actions are checked before any player receives priority, and they do not use the stack. Therefore, after Pitiless Plunderer's ability resolves, we immediately check our treasure tokens' toughness and then place them into the graveyard. This combo is unfortunately very easy to set up and to pull off, and so I hope, with it, as well as all the other combos I have discussed, you understand how they work and why you must never, ever run them in your commander decks. So now that you know about these card combinations and their resulting effects, I hope you know never to run them for your own safety and the safety of your playgroup. But now I want to hear from you. Are there any other cards or combinations that you think should never ever be run in Commander? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/Tolarian or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/Tolarian. Thanks once again to Keeps for sponsoring this video.